Hi, last night I watched The Intruder, the 1962 drama directed by Roger Corman and written by Charles Beaumont based on his novel. It stars William Shatner as Adam Kramer, a visitor to the small town of Caxton in the American South that's just about to start integrating its public school. There are people in the town who are not keen on this, but are prepared, I should say, to go along with it as it is the law. But Kramer has other ideas and starts to stir up the worst elements of people's personalities, suggesting a way of fighting back against this new law, gradually capitalizing on this to make himself the leader of a new movement in the town. It's clearly a low budget production and made with a great deal of enthusiasm and effort. Corman himself is best known, of course, for making hundreds of cheap drive-in pictures and priding himself on rarely making a film which lost money. This, however, was one that did. He said that it was because even though he believed absolutely in the film's message of fighting against racism and the despicable hatred that it can create, he felt that it was too blunt in its message and that audiences don't like being lectured. And therefore, in subsequent movies where he felt he had something to say, he made sure that it was more of an undercurrent rather than an explicit lecture. Shatner is absolutely superb in the role. Probably the finest performance of his I've ever seen. He makes Kramer charming and urbane and very attractive in a emotional and charismatic way, but is also a deeply disgusting human being, bluntly racist, exploitative of people around him, and inside himself deeply broken and ashamed and petty. He is someone who feels small and thus has to make others feel smaller so that he can live with himself. The film's ending, I thought, with the inference of a young black man being accused of rape and the possibility of him being lynched, I thought was very similar to Kill a Mockingbird, the film version of which was released the same year. But this is far darker and more blunt. The racism is endemic through the whole town. There isn't anyone who is let off the hook. The closest thing we have to a heroic character is the town's newspaper editor, whose daughter is going to attend the school with the 10 new African American students. He is initially opposed to integration, but is, as I say, prepared to go along with it as it's the law. But as Kramer continues and his speeches become more and more Hitlerish or Trumpian, because it's very hard to tell the difference, he starts to reassess his own prejudices and comes to support integration and even walk with the young students on their way to the school and show his support, which he pays for with a brutal beating. It's a serious film and a sincere film. It's maybe a little clumsy in places. It's not as polished as it could be. But Corman's belief behind it all is very strong. The film was apparently shot somewhat on the run. He and his film crew wound up being kicked out of town because the locals thought it was too controversial, and one shot had to be done literally under the nose of the police before throwing the camera in the back of the car and making a run for it. Shatner delivering a speech where he excoriates Jews and communists is fascinating, given he is himself Jewish. And overall, it's an interesting film and one that I don't think should have been forgotten. Shatner's finest performance, maybe Corman's most sincere and angry political statement as a filmmaker, when he's better known for making cheap horror pictures. But a notable picture, certainly, nonetheless.